In the summer of 408 AD, a man knelt before an altar in Ravenna and refused to fight back. He had defeated Alaric twice. He had turned back invasions that would have ended Rome a generation early. He had held an empire together with nothing but military genius and personal loyalty, while the emperor he served cowered behind palace walls. And now that emperor had signed his death warrant. Flavius Stilicho, half-Vandal, full Roman, the most powerful man in the Western Empire, walked out of that church and surrendered to the soldiers waiting for him. 6 months later, Rome was sacked for the first time in 800 years. To understand Stilicho, you have to understand what the Roman Empire looked like in the late 4th century. It was not the Rome of Augustus. It was not the Rome of the legions and the Republic. By 370 AD, it was an empire held together by inertia, bureaucracy, and the occasional general who actually knew what he was doing. The West and East had been split administratively. The armies were filled with Germanic foederati, barbarian soldiers fighting under Roman command. The emperor was often a figurehead. The real power lived with whoever held the military. Stilicho was born around 359 AD. His father was a Vandal cavalry officer who had risen through the Roman ranks. His mother was Roman. He grew up bilingual, dual-cultured, equally comfortable in the world of the legions and the world of the Germanic tribes that Rome increasingly depended on. This made him useful in ways a purely Roman general couldn't be. He rose fast. By his late 20s, he was commanding embassies to Persia, handling the empire's most delicate diplomacy. Emperor Theodosius I noticed. Stilicho was given command of significant forces. Then Theodosius gave him something more important, his niece Serena in marriage. That made Stilicho family. When Theodosius died in 395 AD, he left the empire to his 2 young sons, Arcadius in the east, Honorius in the west. Honorius was 10 years old. Stilicho was appointed guardian of both boys, commander of all Roman forces, and de facto ruler of the Western Empire. He was 36 years old. He had no legitimate claim to the throne. He had something more durable. He was the only man in the West who could keep the barbarians out. The threats came almost immediately. Alaric was a Visigoth chieftain who had served in the Roman army and decided he'd been underpaid. In 395 AD, he led his forces into Greece, looting everything that wasn't nailed down. Stilicho moved to intercept him. He had Alaric trapped. Twice. In 395 and again in 397, Stilicho surrounded the Visigoths in terrain they couldn't escape and began to squeeze. Both times, political interference from the east, from Arcadius's court, which resented Stilicho's power and considered him a dangerous half-barbarian upstart, forced him to let Alaric go. He swallowed it. He kept serving. In 401 and 402, Alaric invaded Italy directly. Stilicho defeated him at the Battle of Pollentia and again at Verona. He pushed the Visigoths back out of Italy. Alaric retreated to the Balkans and licked his wounds. Then, in 405, a different barbarian warlord named Radagaisus crossed the Danube with an army that ancient sources claim numbered in the hundreds of thousands. He made it to Florence before Stilicho crushed him at Fiesole, capturing Radagaisus personally and having him executed. Rome celebrated. Stilicho was the man of the hour, and through all of this, he was doing something politically dangerous: negotiating. He understood that military victories alone couldn't fix the empire's structural problems. He wanted to settle the Germanic tribes inside Roman territory, give them land, integrate them. The old Roman establishment found this offensive. Barbarians were supposed to be conquered or killed, not accommodated. Stilicho was playing a long game. He was building the foundation for a Roman Germanic future. His enemies at court were building a case against him. Honorius was not a ruler. He was a man-shaped anxiety who happened to wear a crown. His court had relocated to Ravenna in 402, not for strategic reasons, but because Ravenna was surrounded by marshes and hard to attack. It was the capital of an emperor who never stopped being afraid. While Stilicho fought in the field, Honorius presided over a court filled with bureaucrats and courtiers who feared Stilicho's popularity and resented his power. The chief among them was a man named Olympius, a court official who had spent years quietly building a case that Stilicho was planning a coup, that he wanted to make his son emperor, that his negotiations with Alaric were treason, not strategy. None of it was true, but Honorius was exactly the kind of man who believed things that confirmed his fears. In 407 and 408, the situation unraveled fast. The Rhine frontier collapsed. 3 major Germanic groups crossed into Gaul on New Year's Eve of 406, in what became one of the most consequential border failures in Roman history. Britain was falling into chaos. Alaric had resurfaced, demanding payment for his years of service as a foederatus. Stilicho argued that Rome should pay, that it was cheaper than another war. The Senate, at Olympius's urging, refused. In the summer of 408, while Stilicho was at Ticinum preparing a campaign, Honorius held a military assembly. Olympius gave a speech implying that Stilicho had treasonous designs on the eastern throne. The soldiers, primed, frightened, angry, rioted. They killed Stilicho's supporters throughout the camp. The purge spread. Stilicho heard what was happening. His barbarian troops wanted to march on Ravenna and take the city by force. He refused. He would not make war on Rome. Stilicho fled to a church in Bononia. Under Roman law, even imperial soldiers couldn't drag a man from sanctuary without a bishop's permission. Stilicho had bought himself time. There was a moment where it seemed like he might be arrested but spared, brought to court, tried, given a chance to answer the charges. Then a second letter arrived from Honorius. The charge had been upgraded. Not arrest. Execution. The bishop relented. The soldiers entered the church. Stilicho walked out to meet them. His own men, the barbarian foederati who had fought beside him for years, offered to fight their way out. He forbade it. He told them that no Roman blood should be shed on his behalf. He was executed on August 22nd, 408 AD. His son Eucharius was killed shortly after. His wife Serena, the emperor's own cousin, was strangled on the order of the Roman Senate. In the days following Stilicho's death, soldiers across the empire turned on the families of their barbarian comrades. The wives and children of foederati serving in the Roman legions were massacred. An estimated 30,000 barbarian soldiers abandoned the Roman army. Most of them walked directly to Alaric's camp and joined his forces. Stilicho had spent 15 years keeping Alaric out of Italy. In 6 months, Alaric was at the gates of Rome. On August 24th, 410 AD, less than 2 years after Stilicho's execution, Alaric's Visigoths entered Rome through the Salarian Gate. The city hadn't been sacked in 800 years. St. Augustine began writing The City of God in response to the shock. Jerome, writing from Bethlehem, said he had no words, and it didn't have to happen. Alaric hadn't wanted to sack Rome. He'd wanted payment, land, a settlement. He'd negotiated in good faith. Stilicho had understood this. The court that killed Stilicho had blocked every compromise, then found themselves without the one general who could have defended the city if diplomacy failed. Honorius outlived the sack. He lived until 423 AD, ruling from his safe marshes in Ravenna, apparently unbothered by what his decisions had cost. History records that when a messenger arrived with news that Rome had fallen, Honorius was confused. He thought they were talking about a chicken he kept named Rome. Whether the story is true is uncertain. Whether it captures something essential about the man is not. The Western Roman Empire limped on for another 66 years after Stilicho's death. It finally collapsed in 476 AD. But the rot that killed it, the inability to integrate the Germanic peoples, the purging of competent men for political reasons, the preference for safe mediocrity over dangerous excellence, was already well established by the time Stilicho walked out of that church. Stilicho is one of history's great what-ifs. The man who saved Rome 3 times was rewarded with an executioner. The man who ordered his death is remembered, if at all, as the emperor who lost everything his guardian had fought to protect. History remembers Alaric for sacking Rome. But the door was opened from the inside. If you've made it this far, you know what kind of history we're telling here. The kind that's been buried for a reason. Subscribe. We do this every week.